Well, I think the point of difference that I want to really emphasize is that many times when we talk about recessions and phenomena like that, we tend to look at aggregate data, 4% growth, this, that growth. I am one who absorbed with conviction as a student many years ago, the point made by the great sociologist of the 20th century, C. Wright Mills, that you really can't interpret history when you look at aggregate data, that you must look at the crossroads between aggregate data and the personal trouble of individuals. For many ordinary Nigerians, this recession started long before we called it a recession, and it's gotten a lot worse. So if you take their perspective into account, juggling aggregate data, whether you grew 4%, becomes really truly meaningless. I think what we need to do as a country is look at how much our compatriots, our fellow citizens, have been diminished as human beings by the current conditions in which they live. If we do a good study, we will find that in the age of private jets, our immediate past president used private jet sales growth in Nigeria as a measure of economic advance. In the age of private jets, I think more Nigerians have progressively become worse off in terms of their dignity as human beings, the quality of life they live. And this has been going on for close on 10 years. And so if you're going to look at a recession, you're going to have to look at a strategy that brings more ordinary people from the depths of servitude where they are stuck, and not on whether there is a 4% growth in the economy. I don't know, I'm not in the minds of those who are working on it, but I hope that it is one that addresses how to empower the poorest of the poor in a manner that is sustainable, not in a quick handout manner, but in a sustainable manner. I mean, there are examples of how you try those kinds of things. The element in the APC manifesto that dealt with conditional cash transfers to the poorest of the poor, I have no reservation in claiming credit for it being there. I mean, these are ideas that worked remarkably well in Brazil under Lula, but I thought that there are certain kinds of Nigerian spin that needs to go on it to lead to sustainable improvement in the quality of life of the poorest of the poor. I'm not sure how it's been implemented, but I can tell you that the right kind of people, young people driving that process, properly tutored about a national challenge of moving the poorest of the poor out of where they are, we will gain a momentum that will lead to certain capacity to continue to create wealth amongst the poorest of the poor that will change their condition and lift things up. Critical to that has to be how education, I mean, using a model I call the pedagogy of the determined, is applied as they get these cash transfers to creating what I like to call an entrepreneurial people's capitalism, in which more people are engaged in work, when I think of work, that leads to output in critical areas that drive certain value chains that can make for progress in Nigeria. Everything has to be put in its proper context. I don't think that it is, whatever the problems of the National Assembly may be, I don't think that it is fair to expect them to pass something that doesn't have support in terms of the nature of the program. As a friend of mine used to joke, there are people who already opened their mouth waiting to suck in the 30 billion. That's not what we're trying to achieve. We have a voracious elite that is schooled in rent-seeking, that will nicely write all kinds of proposals, and before you know it, the 30 billion is gone, and we're worse than where we started. So, an implementation strategy is critical to any of these kinds of things. And if we don't have clarity on where we're going, then there's no point in taking a loan. But the other thing we're taking for granted is that there are people waiting there to hand us money. Not quite. Even the Chinese, in playing for dominance and growth, might be interested in giving you, but even they want to see something about how the money will be used. So there's too much being taken for granted in the whole process. It requires more serious work by passionately committed people who really are driven not by just picking up the general information that you spend your way out of recession, but by a real passion for how you do that and the difference that it makes in sustaining growth in the country. I'm a Nigerian who makes some effort, not a lot, but at least some effort to pay attention to what's going on. And I don't know what the strategy is. If I don't know, you can imagine some foreign investor sitting in New York or Dubai. So the first thing is to have a clear strategy and to market it to the world. And then your budget, based on this clear strategy, can then make sense. Numbers don't matter. Numbers are just numbers. If you don't have a comprehensive game plan, there is a likelihood that you can sub-optimize, and one plan will sabotage the other, all kinds of subplots, as you will. So it is from a comprehensive game plan that you then take the next level and do the particular plans for those sectors, dovetailing into the comprehensive plan. It's an interesting paradox that we are back talking planning when 25 years ago we were unraveling everything about planning in the country. I think to the credit of Kalu Dikakalu, he made an effort when he was Minister of Finance and Economic Development to develop capacity for a perspective plan, a rolling plan, and then annual budgets that flow from this. We have not shown much discipline in traveling that path, and you can explain why we haven't gotten a trajectory that we're traveling because of this failure to have this. The now late Chief Rashid Badamasi also led a committee to develop an industrial policy for the country. It's all part of this perspective planning. I had the privilege of working with him on that. All of that, all those things are just on shelves in this country. It's a certain element of unseriousness in the Nigerian political class. This lack of discipline in the political class, whether they be soldiers or they be civilians. Very sad. Well, I think a critical difference is to make a note of the fact that globalization is being challenged. You're going to have more beggar than neighbor policies, coming out of major economies of the world. And so when you think trade, you're not going to be thinking trade in terms of access that is patronizing. Classic patronizing access for trade is AGOA, but even that we didn't manage to take advantage of. Now, if you now come to a time when such will be less likely to be there, you will see that the environment for trade at a time when we must begin to export is challenged. This is really an element we have to pay attention to as we look to 2017 and beyond.